What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be doing a bit of a discussion video on how I think the Droidekas should be tweaked in order to make them a little bit more balanced and a little bit more enjoyable to play as. Obviously, since they dropped almost a week ago today, they have been the topic of a lot of discussions around the community, with I'd say the majority of people saying that they're a little bit underpowered. However, I have also heard people saying that they're actually OP as well, and although I don't agree, I do kind of see where those people are coming from, but I'll touch on that more in just a second. Now, for those who haven't seen it, Ben Walk did say on Twitter that they have no plans for a buff as of right now, which isn't the best news to hear, honestly, but hopefully they will listen to the community very soon, because like I said, it does seem that most people are under the impression they are just a tad on the weaker side. As for my opinion on the Droidekas, I do fall into the camp that thinks they're just a little bit underpowered. However, I also think I'm a little bit more towards sort of the middle area than where a lot of people are, as I do see a lot of people saying they're completely useless, which definitely isn't the case. For most of us, I think the main reason they feel underpowered is due to having such a unique playstyle compared to everyone else in the game. All the other heroes, reinforcements and the classes have unique yet also very similar playstyles, in that you can essentially do a lot of running and gunning and play fairly aggressively with pretty much everything in the game. As for the Droidekas, however, they do have a very slow, careful playstyle that kind of forces you to have to flank and pick your moments to get into their regular stance. And so honestly, I think most of the complaints are coming from a place where people just haven't tried adjusting to the new playstyle yet, which like I said is probably fair enough because they are so different than everything else in the game. Now, with all of that being said, they definitely do have a few issues that need to be fixed. Nothing at all too drastic, as like I said, I think they lean more towards being balanced than they do being super underpowered, but there are definitely some things that need to change. The main thing for me is their damage drop off at range, and I'm not talking about long range, as I don't think they should deal a lot of damage at longer range, but I'm more talking about literally 10 meters away from where they're standing. Up close, their damage is awesome, and arguably it might even be a little bit too good, which is where I think some people are getting the whole OP thing from. But as soon as the enemy is like 10 to 15 meters away, it honestly seems like you do no damage at all, and for me that is definitely part of why they feel so weak. Just look at a weapon like the CR2 for example. That blaster is clearly a very close quarters style blaster and it dominates up close, yet obviously at range it does drop off a fair bit. With that being said, at medium range, if you feather the trigger and manage to land enough shots, it can still be somewhat useful, even if that's not its best suited situation. If a regular blaster can act that way, especially when I'd argue it's more suited to close quarters than the Droideka's wrist blaster, then it makes no sense to me why their blasters are so weak as soon as you're not within just a couple of meters of your enemy. So for me, that is the number one thing that I think needs changing, adding a little bit more damage at medium range, because at the moment there's just no chance you're going to win gunfights. Even with 350 HP and a full shield, a lot of the time you can die fairly easily in that situation. Now, I'm not at all saying it needs to be a massive upgrade, because like I said, I actually think they're not as weak as most people say they are, and if they got too much of a buff then they would in fact become a little bit overpowered, but just giving them maybe a 20 to 30% damage increase at medium range really would help them be a lot more viable. I think they're fine the way they are at long range, as we don't want them to dominate from pretty much everywhere on the map, but as of right now they're pretty much only effective when you're in really close quarter situations, which due to their speed and movement really doesn't help them at all. Now, that actually leads me on to the next change I think they need to see, and again, this is nothing too huge, but I think their transformation time is a little bit of an issue as it is right now, because it leaves them completely open to attack, which in my opinion really isn't very fair. In just the last few months, we've seen both Obi-Wan and Vader get damage reduction added to their animations like the Force Choke and the All-Out Push, and the reasons behind this make absolute sense. While they're in these animations, they are completely vulnerable to attack. The developers clearly added that damage reduction knowing that it is a little bit unfair when you just try and use an ability and essentially it gets you killed because the character just stands there and there's really nothing you can do. Well, in my opinion, the same thing should be applied to the Droidekas, not at all to the same extent of a 90% damage reduction or anything like that, but they should at least get some protection when they transform into and out of wheel form, as for most of us, that's the part that usually ends up in a death. Now, I know people are going to say, oh, just get into cover and transform in safety and then walk out into battle, and absolutely, that is by far the easiest way to avoid this issue, but the only thing is that that can't always happen, and there are times when you just can't transform in a safe spot, yet you do have to transform, and like I said, 9 times out of 10 that's going to end up getting you killed. Again, I'm not saying there should be some drastic change where they cut the animation in half, make the shield pop instantly and give 90% damage reduction or something ridiculous like that, but just maybe a 50% damage reduction for that split second while they're vulnerable would at least give them a chance to transform, and it wouldn't be too overpowered since they can still take a fair amount of damage in that time. Either that or just ever so slightly decreasing the animation time, even by 10 to 15%, could be all it takes to make them a little bit more viable in those kinds of situations. Now, these two changes alone, slightly decreasing their vulnerability when transforming and slightly increasing their mid-range damage, would really make them a much more viable option already in my opinion, yet they also wouldn't become too powerful at the same time, as I think we'd all agree that after this whole Anakin debacle over the last few months, no one wants to deal with another OP character in the game. These changes alone would be great to see and would hopefully make them much more balanced and enjoyable, but there are also some changes that I think could make them even more viable, yet again not cross that line of being overpowered. I think right now they are far too weak against Saber heroes just solely due to their movement. If you're standing up and you get hit with a Saber, it's pretty much game over and there's literally nothing you can do at that point, but I think that's fine in the situation where you're standing up and able to fight. In wheel form, however, I think they're still so weak against Saber users due to that annoying ragdoll effect where it kind of drags you back towards the Saber user, and that is mainly what I'm talking about here because that really is an issue that needs fixing sooner rather than later. You can see in this clip here that Yoda hit me from behind and then I tried to quickly roll away to safety, and to be fair, I think he did hit me before I rolled past him, but you can see here I actually get dragged back towards him for some reason, which seems to be a common thing with these Droidekas. It's kind of like the old Saber lock on absolute steroids. At this point I was super low on health, but I probably should have been in the clear to at least be able to scurry off and have a chance at surviving. But that little ragdoll effect just makes it impossible, and that's the change that I'm talking about in regards to the Saber heroes. When you're standing up and not trying to enter wheel form, absolutely you should get killed 9 times out of 10 in that situation, but if you're already in wheel form and pretty much on your way to safety, you should still be able to get hit with a Saber, but you definitely shouldn't get dragged back into the fight. So hopefully that does get changed in the not so distant future. Honestly, with these 3 changes, I think the Droidekas would be really well balanced, as I think the rest of it just does come down to people not quite knowing their playstyle rather than them being super underpowered or anything like that. As I said earlier, I do fall into the camp of thinking they're very slightly on the weaker side, but by no means are they useless, and I definitely don't want to see a huge buff, as that would probably make them fairly OP, which after Anakin I would just really prefer not to see that for quite a while. But anyway guys, those are just my suggestions as to how they could fix the Droideka to be a bit more balanced. I'm definitely keen to hear what you guys think as well, so let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree and what changes you guys would like to see as well. If you are new to the channel, then feel free to subscribe and turn on your notifications so you don't miss out on any more Battlefront 2 videos or live streams. Thank you all so much for watching. You guys have a great day and I'll catch you all in the next one.
Roger, roger.